You are now entering the LuxCore Studios. And you've secured a seat for the Protecting Your Radius podcast. Here, we build connections from your contracting profession to some of the top bleeding edge products and services. Don't get deterred. Let's not delay. Here is your host, Nathan Downs.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Protecting Your Radius podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Downs, and I have a special friend here with me today, Eric Dubbell out of Oklahoma City or Edmond, Oklahoma. And he's going to be sharing with us a lot of concepts about finances, about how to set up different financial mechanisms within your business, within your home. And I think that this is an important conversation to have, Eric, because one thing I wanted to get off and kind of set the precedence for the whole conversation is, you know, the stats, we're all aware of that as small business owners, that 9 out of 10 businesses that start up today fail, right? And I think a lot of that there's two reasons. I talk about this all the time, and this is a big tenet of the podcast, is the one reason is because people don't know you're in business. Right. So you don't have enough calls, you don't have enough leads, you don't have enough sales, all those things. That's the main
the awareness thing. Isn't there yet.
Absolutely. The other thing is money.
Right.
You have cash flow problems. You're sitting there, you're sitting there right now looking at your QuickBooks or looking at an Excel spreadsheet and saying, I don't know where the money's coming from. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills tomorrow. I didn't properly plan. I didn't have a plan to not fail.
Right.
So we don't plan to fail. We fail to plan.
That's right.
And so anyways, so all of that being said, kind of give everybody a little bit of like insight into your background and where you're professional and stuff.
Well, you and I have been friends for a long time.
Almost 20 years. Yeah.
Probably a little bit more, maybe, actually. This is my 24th year in business, for myself, so. But, I think I probably, like a lot of your listeners, I've always been entrepreneurial. And so I didn't know what that meant early, but once I figured this is what I wanted to do and own a business and own my time, I had to do the same thing. I had to learn how to, get my name out there and get the word out and to understand how to manage the business and money and people and all that kind of stuff, right? So, but 24 years of doing this, Nathan, and I think the biggest part I love, and one of the reasons I love being asked to do this, is the education piece.
Sure.
Nobody knows anything until they know, right? And so, and then sometimes when you learn it, you're like, wow, that's common sense. Well, it is common sense if someone tells you.
Sure.
But public school doesn't do a good job of probably educating us on real life matters. How do you buy a home? How do you start a business? How do you pay your taxes? How do you manage your money? I mean, it's not, And so that's where I come in, I think, is I've learned and I've loved to be able to educate people on all things money, right? Personal, business, retirement, investments, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's how we met. I worked in your organization 20 years ago.
Right.
And thinking of that, like I was a young 20-something-year-old that didn't know nothing about nothing with any of this stuff. And all the things that I learned over that time was specifically for where we're at today.
Right.
Having a successful business as fast as we grow and understanding all those financial pieces, which is why I wanted to do an episode specifically about this stuff for you guys, because professionals are the ones watching this and consuming this content, Eric. So let's kind of start and kind of back up there and look at, like, what does it mean to, I don't know, have a financial plan, like for your business, like what, kind of break that down for us.
I think a good illustration that I think you guys will get is building a house. If you're going to build a structure, a house or anything, you start with the foundation, right? And then you kind of move up, right? Yep. And so if a great financial plan, it starts with the foundation of a few different things, right? It's typically insurance in products. You could look at life, auto, home, commercial, business, umbrella policies, things like that, right? And then maybe some legal protection. We do a little bit of that for our clients, but things like that. We've even got into ID theft, recently. And then it kind of goes from there into, eliminating your debt, right? Keeping that under in check, right? And personal debt and business debt's a little bit different, but still no debt is kind of the goal at some point,
It's better.
And then, and then investments and planning for the future, and which is kind of what would be like the roof of the house, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea behind it, and you got to do it in a certain order, because if you get out of order, then the structure crumbles because maybe you missed a step or whatever,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of an illustration of what that looks like. And we can dive a little deeper into each one, but that's the idea and the structure of a personal financial plan, a business financial plan, right? You gotta have something on paper, in writing, a structure that you're following, or winging it doesn't
Right.
doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Same way in business and at home.
Sure.
Right. Like having both of those. So break that, like, Eric, go into a little bit about that as far as like, what have you seen? Because you've been super successful over all the years you've been in business, and which is one of the reasons you're here, right? And what do you think is the big disconnect from maybe for people that haven't ever seen this stuff, or these are going to be new concepts and things we're talking about here?
I think keeping it simple, first of all, and understanding and having the eagerness to learn, right? And not just being, even with us sitting here today, just accepting what you're hearing blindly, right? Which I think a lot of people do,
Sure.
Understand it and trust and relationship and all that kind of stuff that you and I have. But let's take life insurance as an example, just because that's a big misnomer. People, they hear it and then they kind of like shut down, or they don't even know. Let's talk about the purpose of it. If I were to ask someone like you, and I know you already know the answer, right? But if I was just to ask the average person on the street, hey, what's the purpose of life insurance? And we can engage in a conversation. What do you think their answer would be?
To get paid if I die or something?
Probably leave something to somebody.
Right, yeah.
That's really not the case. It's somewhat. And so let's break it down in a simpler format. You have auto insurance, don't you?
Of course.
Okay. If you got in a car accident, what does the auto insurance you have replace?
Depends on your policy, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
but it would replace your vehicle.
The vehicle, sure.
If you had a house and you had a tornado or a flood, it would replace the house or your contents. People have cell phone insurance. Why?
Right.
They drop it in the street, or they drop it in the
kid breaks
swimming pool.
Crazy.
It replaces their phone.
Sure.
So what does life insurance replace? Because it doesn't replace the person. It replaces their income that they were making for the people left behind. Okay. So that's the biggest misnomer. Some people are told it's an investment. It's not an investment, right? There's investments or investments, but life insurance is not an investment. It's to replace the income that you left behind to a spouse, children, or whoever you're taking care of.
Yeah.
People all the time say, well, I don't have a spouse and I don't have kids. And so I would say, well, if your income went away, who's going to be left holding the bag?
Yeah.
Nobody. Well, then you don't need it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you think maybe in the future you're going to get married, or in the future you're going to have kids, there's a thing you could say. I can make a case where, well, let's get it while you're young, healthy, and lock it in. But you wouldn't need very much. But once someone has those things in place and people are depending on your income, you have to protect that income from people, which is why people need about 10 times what they make, right?
Gotcha.
Let's say someone makes $100,000 a year, or fitness just as a round number.
Sure.
Well, how are you going to replace $100,000 for someone, especially if a business or whatever? Well, if you had $1 million policy, right? People are like, oh my gosh, that's $1 million. No. Why would you have $1 million? Because that could be invested and that could produce $100,000 a year for the surviving person or people without having to tip into the principal.
Sure.
And then it's always going to be there.
Gotcha.
Most people think, oh, I'm going to pay off the house and I'll be fine. Well, then you don't have any money.
Yeah.
It's not always the case.
Yeah. So one thing we talked about, Eric, as you're mentioning that, is I was thinking about, I've heard different ideas and philosophies on getting insurance policies on owners.
Right.
So for someone like me, so I have my house taken care of, right? My personal stuff. But what would you suggest? So I don't have anything right now on me for the business, but as you know, and you've seen, the business is solely dependent on me and those that are employed, but there's a lot of people that are depending on, me being here, moving the ball down the field, so to speak.
Of course.
So what is that like? I feel like there's a space there for some products or services there. Yeah. And it's the same concept, but and the term that we use is called key man policies, right? Okay. Because
if let's say more than one person owned a business, they may buy out the other person. The policy would be owned by the business. And then that policy is to pay off, like buy out the other spouse or owner or whatever. That's not going to run the business day to day.
Gotcha.
Your situation, the sole proprietor, you obviously want to protect your people and the business and stuff if something happened to you, right? Well, Ashley, probably your wife, is I don't know if she's part owner or she would, because you're married, there's some ownership there.
Right.
Well, she's not going to step in and run the business.
Right.
But it's worth something.
Sure.
So a key man life insurance policy through the business she would get the money that the business is worth. So then she could, she could not have to run it.
Okay. Yeah.
She could sell the business too.
Sure. Of course.
But you see my point?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a lot of
Yeah.
the key man stuff is more when there's multiple owners because you're buying out the other person
Gotcha.
that the other family's not going to participate in. So.
Yeah, that's really good. So, what about investment side of stuff?
Yeah.
We've been talking, and we were talking about that through the end of last year. We're brand new. So we're sitting here going, what are the options? I even called you a couple times, like looking at different things, and there's so many different vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
It is, even someone like me that kind of gets it, it is massively confusing and very intimidating, especially for us construction guys where we just want to go out and build, buy our product, build it, get paid, and do it again and again and again. So from a professional standpoint, what do you kind of walk me through some of the different things that are out there?
Everybody's heard of a 401k.
Of course.
Everybody thinks that everything's a 401k, right? It's like a good example is every tissue is a Kleenex. Well, no, that's not necessarily, but I
it's a
get
brand.
it, right? But a 401k is an option. So let's break it down this way. For a new business, the very first thing I even asked you this today when I walked in is, do you have employees or do you not? Right? Are you self-employed?
Yep.
Or do you have just contract labor? Or do you actually have some W-2 employees that you're paying, right? That makes a difference. Because whatever the owner does, he has to do it from a compliance standpoint, he has to do it for his people. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right. So give you an example of some technical terms of some things, right? There's a SEP IRA, since SEP, okay? Most people think it stands for self-employed pension. It's not. It's a simplified employee pension, right?
Okay.
But self-employed people have it. For people that don't have employees, right? That's a way you can invest a lot more than just a personal IRA, right? Because IRAs are individual retirement accounts.
Right.
There's traditional ones, there's Roth ones, which is pre-tax money that you get the tax deduction today, or it grows tax-free to the future. Right. Well, those limits are $6,500 a year per person if they're under 50, or $7,500 if they're over. Well, a SEP would be through the business, and you could put up to 25% of your income, up to $66,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
And still do the personal part, right?
Right.
So the personal is personal, and then you get the business. So a SEP would be great for someone that is self-employed, has no employees, and really doesn't have any plans to hiring anybody, right?
Okay.
They're by themselves. But what if someone does, like you, someone has some employees, right? Mm-hmm. They want to start something, but they want to be smart. They don't want to spend a lot of money. A simple IRA is a really good option because it's really inexpensive, right? 401ks can get expensive, but it's worth it if you're putting enough money in, right? It's a deduction. Okay. But a simple IRA is a kind of a startup. What that is you can put in, you had a couple options, but you can start even for someone brand new. You can match your people, only have to give them 1% for 2 of the first 5 years of their pay. Now, if they put money in, then you match. If they don't put any money in, then you don't have to do anything, right? So it's a little bit, I always recommend to my business owners that I work with, let them have a little skin in the game. If they're not concerned about their own retirement, why would you?
Sure.
So you should get them to participate, right? Which is why we do education seminars and lunch and learns to educate the people, because we would want everybody to be saving for themselves.
Sure.
But that allows you as the owner to put in up to 3% for yourself as the employee. Okay. And then you can match yourself from the employer side, because you're both. You're an employee and an employer. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
And so Let me just confirm the numbers always change. But like a simple IRA limit, it's 15,500 this year.
Okay.
So it's not 66,000,
Sure.
obviously.
Sure.
But for someone that's starting out and they go, hey, I can do more than 6,500. So how about if I do that plus the simple? Well, they can do up to 15,500. And if they're over 50, they can do 19,000, right? So it's a way to save some more money.
Okay.
And give your employees a way to, it builds loyalty, right? Here's what I always tell everybody, every one of my business owner clients that don't have a retirement plan. I say, why don't you have one, right? What's the reason? And I haven't got around to it. I heard it's too expensive. I don't have any money. Well, you're either going to pay the government or you're going to pay your people.
Amen.
It's one or the other. So you might as well pay your people to build some loyalty, build some, build a little bit of a benefit package as your business is growing to keep people. Because it's a lot harder to get someone else and retrain them all, right? Retention's important, right? Would you agree?
100%.
So offering them something, that rewards their loyalty, helps for their own family. It goes beyond just paying them, right? Yeah. It's helping them with their own retirement and stuff like that while you're doing yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I was going to say is employees that don't have financial problems typically don't leave for another $1 an hour somewhere else.
That's good.
Yeah. So provide an environment where they don't need to be looking for other, better paying jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought about that in the past too. I've seen companies where you have a whole group of people that work at a company and everybody has a side hustle.
Right.
And I wonder sometimes, I'm like, is that an environmental thing? Like it's encouraged, or I don't think so. I think a lot of times you have a company where everyone's underpaid, so they all have to supplement income, and as you're saying that, I'm sitting there thinking like, it's the same thing. Like what's the buy-in from the business to the employees,
right?
We have, as business owners, I believe that I have a responsibility to my team to make sure that they're getting taken care of and stuff. So when you were mentioning that on the numbers, so can you do like a simple or a SEP or something along with like a traditional or a Roth? Or
because the traditional IRA and Roth IRA, that's personal. That anybody can do that.
Got it.
And then the business, it's just like if you had a job and you had a 401k at your work and a personal.
Got it. Okay.
Which brings to this, right? You can have a 401k as a business as well. Let's say you have your business is growing, and as the owner, you really want to max out your retirement. Either you're playing catch up or you're making quite a bit of money and you're like, I need a bigger tax deduction. Yeah. I got all this cash flow. So a 401k would be good. And you can create with that, there's a lot more options, right? Okay. Because you can set up vesting schedules. So you can reward the people that last, that you're going to match your employees what they put in, right? But if they leave within the first 5 years, you may not want to give them all your match. So you can do a 3-year vesting, a 5-year vesting, which just in layman's terms is if let's say you work for me, all right, and you've been with me for 3 years and I'm matching, but I have a 5-year vesting schedule, you may only get 60% of my money. You get all your money. Yeah. But you only get 60% of my match because you didn't stay as long as we thought you would, right?
Sure.
Which I think is fair.
Yeah.
It rewards the longevity, rewards your people that are, with you longer term. And then let's say that you're in a situation kind of like the SEP IRA, that you're making a lot of money, but you want some other features, like you want maybe a loan feature, which I don't recommend doing, but you know how small businesses, are, and business, sometimes that's a necessary thing. Mm-hmm. Well, a solo 401k, they're called solo Ks, give you some 401k options, but that the SEP doesn't, right?
Oh, okay.
And let's say this, I'll give you another example. Why is the Roth IRA so good? I know but it's like, would you rather pay taxes on just what you put in and have all the earnings for the rest of your life grow tax free, which you never pay taxes on? Or do you want to pay taxes on all the money and defer it until, save the money now, save the tax money now,
right,
and defer it down the road, right? And there's not a right answer, but the Roth IRA is pretty impressive.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I ask people all the time, are taxes going to go up in the future to pay off all the money we printed?
Right.
Or down?
It's probably going up.
Probably going up. So
Feels like
having
it's going up.
tax-free money would be important. Well, a solo K, you can do a Roth 401k option inside of it and get all that tax-free. And you could do a split. You could do a little bit in the traditional 401k and a little bit in the Roth 401k, except you can't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you've got some additional options with the 401k, but those are kind of the basics. Simple IRA for business at less than 100 employees. I didn't mention that earlier, but less than 100 employees, kind of starting off, want to do something's better than nothing, but they can't do a bunch, right? A SEP would be good for someone self-employed. A 401k would be for a bigger company or people that want to, invest more money.
Okay. Is a 401k capped?
Same. It's so the 401k is the same. So here's the numbers on that. It went up this year. So 22,500 is what you can put in like personally for as an employee.
Okay.
Okay. And then when you add in the match, then you can do up to 66,000, kind of like the SEP.
Gotcha.
Right. So as a business owner, right?
Yeah.
But if you're over 50, right? The IRS, the government, I guess you could say, they know that Social Security is not going to be the thing people need to count on. So they're enticing us by raising these limits to, hey, take care of yourself. Has that as a supplement. Social Security was never meant to be the only thing, right? And so if you're over 50, you can do 30,000 a year in a 401k as an employee.
Okay.
And then obviously that'd be 73,500 as a business owner. Does that make sense? So those are the limits. And they change. They don't change every year, but they're starting to go up every couple years because the IRS and the government just realizes, hey, we got to put some power back into the people's hands to save their own money, right? And not depend on us.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what do you think? I was thinking, what do you think is one of the most important things to do with reducing debts, either in the business or personally? Like, what are some things that, from all your years of experience, what are things that you've seen, like areas where people have made mistakes, without getting into like, you're not making recommendations, but where people have gotten caught up in like, oh, I spent my money here and I shouldn't have done that or whatever.
See it all the time. And I think it's not just employees that start making some money, that they spend it too early, right? They're not financially bulletproof yet. So they go buy a house that they probably shouldn't have bought. They buy some cars they shouldn't have bought, right? The level of patience in our country is at an all-time low, right? We're like, now we want it now. I mean, and that's just the culture perpetuates that, right? Social media, everything's the faster the better, right? So I think as business owners grow, and as you know, when you're running a successful business, you can jump income pretty quick. Don't be too fast to go buy the big house and go buy the expensive cars and have a $1,200 car payment or $1,000 car payment or multiple of that, right? I see that's the biggest thing. And here's what I would say, just from experience talking. Be very careful on what does the bank say you can afford? What does the realtor as you're looking for homes and things like that from a personal standpoint? Okay. Because they're all, the bigger the house, the bigger the loan, the bigger the paycheck for them. That's not the case always. Like, I would look at it from a perspective of, if we're just talking about homes right now for a second, if I can't afford the 15-year payment, then don't buy that house. Even if you want to do a 30-year just to keep cash flow, if you can't afford the 15-year, it probably means you're overbuying.
Sure. Makes sense.
And everything that's bigger is more expensive, right? People say, well, it's it used to be able to say the rates were low. Well, they're not real right now, right? But you get a 4,000 square foot house versus 3, everything's more expensive. Everything. It's not just the payment.
Yes.
It's the insurance, it's the upkeep
utilities,
of everything.
The upkeep.
And so to answer your question, to go back to that, I've seen people that overbought, overpay. They don't get themselves financially independent. How many times have you heard me say this? You got to be financially independent first, or get yourself close to being financially independent. And I'll explain what that means in a second, before you go out and start buying all the luxuries.
Okay.
All that will come. If you're patient, you can get in a position where you work your rear off for, 5, 10 years, realistically. You can have all that stuff later, but pay the price first So financial independence, what's that definition? Do you have enough passive income coming in, right?
Okay.
From your business or from whatever that looks like, that it's covering all your expenses without you having to work. So could you not work physically? Like, could you not put any more time in?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you have invested or whatever you have coming in from your business is paying everything. So that means less debt would be good. Right. People that come to me, Nathan, all the time and say, can I retire? Can I retire? When can I retire?
Yeah.
Right? My first question is, how much debt do you have?
That's good.
Because if you don't have any debt, the answer is quicker.
Sure.
You don't need as much money saved because you don't have to have as much money per month to service your debt. Does that make sense?
Yep. Perfect. Oh, I thought you were going to keep going.
No,
I was excited. I was like, keep going. So the financial independence thing is interesting because there's going to be a lot of professionals that are into this that don't have a plan. And, I mentioned that at the beginning. So what do you think someone should do? I often talk about really all the time. It's just like right now, a couple weeks ago, I saw a picture of my buddy on Facebook and happened to be scrolling through, and he's my size and he lost some weight. And I said, tell me you're working out with someone. You got a coach. And he's like, I did. And you already know him. I was like, dadgummit.
Yeah.
So immediately I Facebook messaged that guy and I said, see, I know me. I'm not that good. I have to have someone holding my hand and dragging my butt along to wherever it is.
We all do.
Okay, good. So I'm not alone.
Right. Yeah.
That's a universal need. Mine is just I wear it on the outside. So you could see it, but that being said, so I had to make the conscious effort of okay, what does this look like? All right, I know I need a coach. Now I got a coach. Then he said, you need to wake up every morning at 5 and meet me at 5. Well, so technically I have to wake up at 4:19. And I'm sitting there going, why go to bed at 11:30 at night? And so I've figured it out. Right. And then my wife sees this and she immediately goes, well, I guess I need the coach too. So when I go, I guess in between.
Right.
So now she's waking up at 4:19 in the morning along with me. And I'm sitting there thinking, and the kids are like, what are they doing? But you know what I'm saying? But we found a purpose, so financially thinking of that, explain what that looks like and having someone in your corner. Cause we've talked about already on the show, we've talked about having a business banker and how but I think having someone like you in your, like you in my corner makes me a better father, a better dad, a better business owner, because there's someone behind me that knows a lot more about the stuff that I really I understand it. Right. But I don't have the time to that ain't my thing. Right. We're talking about, we're building a business. We're out there building things. That's what all of us need to be doing. We need to do our trade and do our profession and do it great. So more and more people, raving fans, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So
what that looks like, I think, Nathan, is we're all experts at something, or we're all knowledgeable about something, right? Kind of going back to what you said, let's say that one of your kids or both kids needed braces at some point, right? Are you going to YouTube how to put braces on my own kid to save $1? Probably. Or do you probably going to go to the orthodontist?
Probably.
Right. So we all do that.
Sure.
Probably shouldn't be doing our own taxes. Probably shouldn't be, if I've called you for fence, recommendations in the past, but probably shouldn't get out there with my hammer and nail set from, Sharper Image and try to build myself a fence.
Yeah.
And so, I think the first thing is recognizing that, hey, like you said, you recognize, hey, I want to do better and move forward. In your example was getting in shape, right? Mm-hmm. Having an accountability person, is probably not news to you. You probably need to get up earlier and get working out.
Sure.
But it's easier to not do it if no one else is counting on you. But if you're paying a guy at 5:00 in the morning to go, then you probably were going to show up, right? Or you're going to quit paying him. One or the other is going to happen, right?
100. Yep.
Well, so with the financial coach, so to speak, it's someone that's been there before, right? None of us are experts. None of us knew this from the beginning. We all, I didn't know anything about anything when I was 25 years old.
Yeah.
But you learn, and then you can share your own story and go, hey, this is where I was. This is what I've done. I mean, I think a good financial coach has been there, done that, helped, and can help. And so getting started, being aware, we've all heard this concept, pay yourself first, right?
Yeah.
It's the idea of get it on autopilot. Get some stuff on autopilot. That's why some of the stuff we've talked about, if you're going to set up if you want to save for retirement, if you want to retire someday, then don't say, well, we'll see what's left over at the end of the month and see if I can invest some.
Right.
No, you have to invest up front. Even that doesn't be a bunch, but it's something that's automatic. It's like you got to protect yourself from you. We got to protect ourselves from each other, right? Or from ourselves, I mean. And so by paying yourself first and getting your financial world and get your financial house in order by putting everything on autopilot, then you can't really screw it up as long as you have money in the account that it's coming from.
Sure.
I call it the financial independence account, right? It may not be your own personal checking account. What if it's a financial independence checking account that as long as there's money in that, it's funding everything you need. It's funding all the stuff that you
That's a slick idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it, right? Regular checkups, you know, how are you doing, right? Every quarter, every 6 months, once a year. Depends on how new is it to someone, right? How much do they need to be protected against themselves?
Yeah.
Probably quarterly then, right? Maybe in the beginning. But once someone's going and they're driving it themselves, then maybe once every 6 months or once a year is okay. That makes sense?
Yep, for sure.
So I think that's the big piece of it, right? Is getting on track and making sure that you don't own the wrong financial products because someone is worried more about what they get paid because of it. It's all over the place, right? Education's key. You got to be with someone. You don't have to pay for people's advice. Like just in what I do, I don't charge any money for any of the advice I give. I don't charge it. I don't charge an hourly price. I believe this. See if you agree with this, and your listeners would probably agree. People love to learn. They don't like to be sold, but they like to learn.
Sure.
So if I can provide education that I would feel valuable, that I find valuable, then what happens is people go, oh, well, I didn't know that's how a Roth IRA worked.
Yeah.
Can you help me set up one? Sure, I can help you set up one. Because they realize the need for it versus me saying, okay, here's all the things you should do. Pay me $1,000 for all my advice and then good luck go getting it all set up.
Yeah.
What a disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not.
It's all needs based.
It's like, here's like for me, here's your workouts and here's what you need to eat. All right, just go get it done. Well, the funny thing was the first day in the gym, we're doing some different things. And he said, you know what's crazy, Nathan? You know exactly what to do. I said, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
He's like, so all I'm going to talk to you about is what are you putting in your mouth? And I was like, I hate you, but this is why I'm paying you.
Right.
But he knew as soon as he saw me start lifting, he goes, no, this boy knows.
Yeah.
He's done it a lot. And I go, oh, that's true.
And there'll be a tipping point where you start seeing results. This is in finance too, but you'll start, all of us, you're doing it. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's so you get sore, all that stuff, right? But first 10 pounds gone.
Yeah.
Then it wants you to get to the next 10 pounds. You save the first $1,000, you want to get to $2,000. Then it starts to feed itself because you're like, hey, this is working, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm on track to pay down this debt, right? You know this concept of debt stacking, right?
Yep.
Where you list kind of all your debts. Well, the reason it works is because you start with the smallest balance, okay, that you owe. Let's say you owe, 7 people something.
Okay.
Well, you write them all out, right? And whoever you owe the least to, you knock that out first. And then you take a big fat red Sharpie, I call it, right? And you cross it off the list.
Okay.
And then you go to number 2. Well, guess what happens? You start seeing there's some progress, your momentum, and then 2's paid off, and then 3's paid off, and then 4's paid off, and all that kind of stuff that I teach, and you're accumulating. And so you're like, it's working. It's working. My workout's working, or I'm saving money, or I'm getting out of debt, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then the momentum starts to take over, and now you still need accountability, but need less of it because you're self-accountable. You go, oh, okay, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see the results.
Absolutely.
Any sacrifice that leads to a result, I think it just further solidifies your thought process and your actions of like, no, I need to do that more. That's the same way for me and Ashley. Like, we started to save some money and then had some money, and then had some more money, then had some more. You're like, hey, this is kind of cool. Not having to worry about every dadgum thing breaking, or same thing for the business as we bring in income, where I'm trying to spend less and leverage that, knowing that as we have a little bit of money stockpiled up in the business throughout the year, Murphy stays away. We've talked about that. You taught me in the past, right? Murphy's Law only works when you don't have anything. And then anything that could go bad does go bad because you have no protection. There's nothing there there's no safety net. There's no safeguards. But when you have those things, especially financially, I think from a business or personal, once you have some money, it's like, it's funny. The car doesn't break every week.
Right.
It's crazy. I don't know how that works, but it seems to work.
Things still happen.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't wreck you because you plan for it.
Yeah.
There's a plan.
Right.
That's why it's called an emergency fund.
Yeah.
It's for emergencies, right?
Sure.
But when there's nothing in the emergency fund, then everything's an emergency.
Everything.
Right.
Yep.
And you mentioned, you said a word that I wanted to go back to, sacrifice, right? You said sacrifice. One of the best definition I've ever heard of sacrifice? Giving up something you love for something you love more.
Sure. That's good.
I'd sacrifice all day for that.
Yeah.
I don't want to sacrifice, but if I could get something I love more than what is, I'm in.
Yeah.
Right? Show me how to do that. Right. And that is the idea we're talking about here, whether it's working out or business or personal finances and stuff like that, because it really is all tied together. Right. You've heard this, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yep.
It's true to the extent that it's all important. Right. And then you prioritize how does that play out? Because the people that are high level achievers, how they do anything is how they do everything.
Yeah.
Right. And it carries over from thing to thing. Right?
Sure.
Sure.
So is there any other stuff about the finance stuff that you want to share with, like I said, we kind of talked a little bit about who the audience is,
right?
Startup guys. And was there anything we missed kind of going through that?
I think one thing, especially coming out of a tough year last year in the market, when we say the market, right? For people that already are doing that, and they're like, man, I hate that market. I lost all this money last year, right? Okay. Let me talk about that for just a second. I think that would be important to give some people some parameters. Number one, if you didn't sell anything last year and just your accounts down, you didn't lose any money, right?
Okay.
So that's a big misnomer. I got my statement. I'm down 50 grand. Really? You still own all the same shares.
Right.
They're worth less, but you didn't sell anything, so you have not locked any losses in, right? So that's a big key that I have to remind my clients all the time. You have not lost any money. Now, also after a good year, you really haven't made any money either, because you haven't made a transaction to lock in either one.
Makes sense.
All right. So long term, you got to be thinking about that, right? The other thing too I thought was interesting is last year was a midterm election year, right? You know what that is, right? And so people that on this podcast that voted, it's on the Tuesday in November, right? Well, those years, if you look at history, they're more volatile, right? The market, when we say the market, it doesn't like uncertainty, right? But there's an interesting statistic that a lot of people don't know, that if you look at the 72-year history, so all the way back to 1950,
okay,
the 12 months following that Tuesday in November, the last 72 years has never been negative. The 12 months following has never been negative.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
So this is based on the S&P 500, which is just an index. But it's averaged an 18.6% return, which is 8% more than any other year in those 72 years.
Wow.
So what does that mean? Does that mean it's going to go up this year? No idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
Sure.
But a 72-year track record that's never gone down, right? After a tough year.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good buying opportunity to me.
Yeah.
Right. Now, everybody has to make their own choices.
Of course.
And this isn't a recommendation to do that, but I think you have to understand is 76% of the time the market is up.
Right.
76% of the time, right? So, we're in Oklahoma. I know there's other people that listen that aren't, but if you and I found a casino here that you won 76% of every hand that was dealt, right?
Yeah.
As long as you didn't get up from the table. Would you go to that?
I'd probably be there all the time.
Yeah, because what if you got a bad streak?
Right.
What if
right.
let's say it was a blackjack table as an
say,
example.
Yeah, sure.
And you knew that 76% of the time you would make money at that game.
Yeah.
If you had 5 bad hands in a row, would you get up and leave?
No.
10? What about 50 bad hands in a row? It'd be tough.
It'd be tough.
As long as you had some cash.
Yeah.
And some chips.
Tough.
But you see my point?
Yeah.
The point is you have to understand that it's really interesting that I've done this for so long that it's the only time, Nathan, that people don't like things on sale. Isn't that weird? I mean, if you were going to buy fencing equipment,
right,
wood or metal,
sure,
and everything was 30% on sale,
it's time to buy, man.
Would you say to your supplier, no, I'm going to hold off until your prices go back up?
No. So
why would people do it when it's an investment or in the market, right?
That's a good point.
It's a great time to buy. I've been telling people this for years. All the scared money is out of the market right now and all the smart money is coming in. There's a reason for that, right? So, and that, of course, it depends on your age and all that kind of stuff, right? But we're talking for the majority of people, the retirement stuff that we've been talking about today is long-term.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Now, if you're 58 and you're retiring in 2 years, we're not talking to you.
Sure.
But if you're 25 or 48 or 30 and you've got 10, 15, 20 years, I mean, you've got to be thinking, who cares what happened in 2022 in the big scheme of things? Maybe I should have been adding more money when it's on sale versus freaking out about the perceived balance that is on paper gone down since last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So
100%.
I think that's something to be aware of, that, and most people don't look at, they've just never been taught. They just don't, they don't know. Right. So they're very risk adverse and they're scared because nobody's ever educated them. Right. And in about 5 minutes, I say these things to people and they go, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever told me that before.
Right.
That's why you need to know it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Exactly. And that's why you're on the podcast.
Yeah.
To teach some people some stuff that we haven't heard before.
And I think one thing that you'd asked me to mention that I didn't want to forget is, I'm an avid reader, avid reader. Right. And even to the point where, let me share this story about Landon real quick. Yeah. Because I know you know the story. So my boys are 16 and 14. Well, when my oldest turned 15, I said to him, would you like a car when you're 16? He said, of course, right? Well, they're athletes, so they don't work outside. Now, he does have a job, but they don't work enough with school and sports and all that stuff, right, to really probably save up enough money for a vehicle. And just in our situation, everybody's different. And I said, but what could he do that would help him in the future, right? Well, I just know what reading books have meant to me, right? And today that's some audible, or podcast or whatever, but just learning, right? Getting outside of yourself and getting information, which is obviously what we're trying to provide here on your podcast. And so I said, here's a list of books, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars for every book. So you can read none of them and not have anything. You could read a few and get a bicycle, or you could put together a plan of what kind of car do you want, right? Within reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, whenever you'll think this is funny. As soon as I told him this, he goes, he thought for a second, he goes, so you're saying I could have a Lamborghini?
Yeah. Exactly.
No,
like Lucas.
No, that's not what I'm saying. There's a limit, right?
Yeah.
But he came up with a plan and he read 33 books in 1 year.
Nice.
And he had to write a one-page summary. Yep. And that it was able to get him a vehicle. We talked about the books. I picked the books because I knew it would feed him, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a big deal because, I mean, I don't know when you started loving to read, it wasn't when I was 15.
No, it was when I started working with you.
Yeah.
When we met, I'd never even through college and high school. I mean, I can't name a book that I finished in its entirety. I think I cheated my way through everything, Cliff Notes it up to death. And I can't imagine kids now with all the AI technology. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Brenda was telling me the other day that's a big pandemic in the colleges right now. They're using the AI technology to write their papers. I'm like, genius. I would have done that. Yeah.
I would have done it too.
I would have done it. I wouldn't have thought that. I would have been like, what are you talking about? It's a tool. It's a resource. I'd be like, hey, I've used the programs now, so I understand exactly what it does. hey, give me a semi-formal dissertation about this, but don't plagiarize. And it literally does it for you. You're like,
crazy.
Come on, man.
Yeah. I just didn't understand the value of reading and growing myself. So here's a couple of books I just wanted to throw out there. That just 3. I mean, there's a bunch, but Atomic Habits.
Yeah, great book.
Is amazing.
Amazing book.
Good to Great.
Good to Great.
Classic.
Yep.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a concept book. It's a book of how do you go from thinking like an employee to thinking like an owner, right? Robert Kiyosaki wrote this book, and Collins wrote Good to Great, and then Atomic Habits was, I can't think off the top of my head right now. Anyway.
Yeah.
He's the only one that wrote Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
But Rich Dad, Poor Dad is it's an old book. It's an older book, but it's a really, the concept behind it for people that are like, I've never heard of that book before. This gentleman had his real father in life was highly educated, worked for the state of Hawaii, and believed that education was everything, and worked at a state job and made, I don't know, 6 figures, let's say $100,000. And his best friend's father, he was around all the time, dropped out of school in the 8th grade, which I'm not recommending that, but just he dropped out of school in the 8th grade, but he had businesses. And as he was growing up, he got the perspective from both fathers, okay? His rich dad and his poor dad.
Yeah.
And he wrote a whole book about it. And it's the mindset, it's the concept, it's the idea of what does an entrepreneurial spirit look like and feel like and sound like and stuff. It's just, it's in a story format. So it's easy to read.
Yep.
It's my first book I recommend to anybody that I hire in my business or bring on board, because I want them to start thinking differently, So
that's good, man.
For what it's worth.
That's good. I often, my favorite, so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad first, but my favorite was the second one, which was actually one that Marshall referred over to me, which was The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews.
Yeah.
And
it's still my favorite book of all time.
Yeah, that's my favorite book of all time. Just because of the stories and like it sets up the tenet, like the 7 things that you need to do to live a productive, successful, and like just, being better of yourself. I think that's the thing that I've always gotten from Andy, and getting to meet Andy a couple times. Right. I mean, what a stud. That guy is a freaking, I just love that man, because his heart for, changing people, and especially for men, like, but, even the moms and dads and everyone in between, like that story is profound.
Right.
I think that was, so what got me, Rich Dad, Poor Dad set up me for when I read Traveler's Gift, a very hard 23-year-old Nathan Downs that had no emotion, that didn't everything, is crying by the end of that book.
Oh yeah.
Because once I got to step 7, I'm like, like all these things came back. Like I wondered, when you have a childhood that you have, and, and I had a rough go, we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have all these things, and you start getting into it and you see that there's a hope. And when it's put in a story form like that, like a parable so much, that it really like gave me as a young man, like some expectations for the future. And then having older people, guys in my life that were coaching into me about, like business and all the things that we've talked about over the years, it's, you guys need to read. If you don't read, I mean, Audible is like you said, Audible and podcasts, this is why I love this platform. This is one of the reasons I wanted to get into it. I have been avid, man, into podcasts for like the last 6 years.
Me too.
And I love all sorts of weird podcasts. I don't do the story podcasts like a lot of people. They're like, you need to get into murder mystery. And I'm like, no, I want to learn something. Like I love the Joe Rogans. I love people that think outside the box, that challenge the status quo.
Right.
And want to deep dive into that. Jocko Willink has one of my favorite podcasts, and Jocko is, freaking Navy SEAL, man, and doing his thing. But man, he's so smart, and he has so much passion to make other people better. And that's what we're trying to do here with, trade professionals. Right. It's like, whether they're in defense, gates, electricians, plumbers, it doesn't matter. They, put roofs on houses and buildings. We want to feed back into and just give some different perspective and challenge people's thought processes.
Yeah, add value. Just add value. And the thing that's cool about podcast, Audible, and all that stuff, right, is you can do it while you're doing other things.
Yes.
I mean, there is part of our subconscious is getting it, even though we may be doing something else. There's some things you have to really pay attention to, but something's better than nothing, like we've been talking about, right?
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing is you can do it in bite sizes. You know, before podcasts and Audible even existed, what did I always tell you? 10 pages a day.
Yeah, 10 pages a day.
10 pages a day.
Yep.
You read a 300-page book a month,
Right.
or 2 books a month based on 100. And so, I mean, what would that do for people if they just read or listened to the podcast for 10 minutes on their drive in or 20 minutes or whatever?
Yep.
While there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying no radio, but I'm saying no radio.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not where you
Right.
want to be financially or business wise or personally, maybe listening to something that provides value and insight and common sense and challenges you and all that stuff, right, would be better than just entertainment.
So for sure, I've had a lot of people over the years ask me, they like hear me talk about all sorts of different stuff,
Right.
but really the sales thing, that's, you know, my bread and butter, right? And they'll come back and ask me like, how did you get good at sales? I'm like, it's funny. This guy is the reason. One of the main reasons, but it was because of you guys were giving me CDs, and I had the whole set of like Brian Tracy's, had like John Hopkins and
Tom
all these
Hopkins.
different, John Hopkins.
Now,
Tom.
John is
Yeah,
he's good
John
with cancer
yeah,
research.
how's
and
he
stuff.
doing? Tom Hopkins. But you know, like they just provided all these thoughts and these processes and these workflows to like get into the psyche of like, how do you talk to someone, you know? And even at FinStech here in the next month or so, when we're all going to be down in Oklahoma City for FinStech, I'm actually doing on one of the mornings in the education portion, I'm doing a whole thing on STAR.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So teaching all the guys
Which is the
out
personality training.
Yep.
Right?
Personality training. That's right. And so we're going to get into that and teach the guys, because there is so much, as you taught me, and we looked at it over the years, that is an integral part of how do you communicate with people? How do you connect with people? And that works in sales.
Yeah.
Right. How do you get someone to flip over to your side, so to speak, without actually doing it? Like just providing them real world solutions. That's what we do in construction. Like I hope everyone out there is encouraged, because being a professional means you're just problem solving. Like it doesn't mean we build a better fence and we may do that and we try to do that, right? But the real key in our business, or specifically that I see for construction, is turning people into problem solvers and then providing the solutions. And that may mean the highest end product there is known to man. Okay. But that also may mean they just need it done. How are you going to be able to help that family and make it happen?
It is problem solving. I mean, what you just said, I mean, we're solving problems. We're making someone else's life or business easier.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's what we all want,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
I think that's such a key, right? It's identifying the problem and giving the solution.
Yep.
Everybody loves to tell the problem. This is the problem. Okay. What's the solution? Because you can't, you got to have both. Right?
Sure.
If you're just going to name all the problems, then you're just whining.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
How about both? How about this is the problem and this is the solution? Right.
And it may not be the right solution,
Right.
but at least you've got something,
Right.
you know, like you said, even like getting a plan, it may not be your end all be all plan,
Right.
but at least starting somewhere is a step in the right direction.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So, man, I appreciate you, Eric. This was a lot of fun.
It's been good.
Lots of good info and details. And, you know, if anybody out there has any questions or anything, as we kind of went through a lot of different, very technical things, you can always email us at info@protectingyourradius.com. And, man, is there anything, we're going to wrap this thing up, put a bow on it. Is there anything you want to leave them with? Eric is a huge leadership guy, I guess you could say. So is there any like one last nugget or anything you want to drop?
Yeah. And I was, you know, this just popped in my mind, right?
Okay.
And you're going to smile whenever I tell you this, right? But 24 years of doing this, like you said, lots of leadership books and seminars and listening to people, and I mean all that entails, right? There's one thing that I think that would changed everything, the trajectory of my business and life and being a dad and being a husband, all that stuff, right? And you know what it is, right?
Yeah.
So Band of Brothers is a boot camp. I mean, we call it, we call it the Band of Brothers boot camp. But when I was introduced to that way of living and thinking and raising children and fighting for the heart of my wife and all those kind of things, right? In 2010, that set me on a different trajectory that was even that I think carried over into business, and I think you would agree.
Yep.
There is no separation, right? Yeah. You are what you are. And so Band of Brothers has been something that's been around for the last decade or a little bit more, that is just a way to challenge men in a really encouraging and strength-filled way, I guess you could call it, that is that we're being the husbands we need to be, we're being the men we need to be, we're being the fathers, to our boys and girls, and that I think that's the thing, right? So I don't know if we have another podcast on that at some point or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, you just said that and you saw me on my eyes light up like saucers. I'm like,
but I there's some listeners right now that just that little 30 seconds worth of what I just said they're like, what is that about?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a website, bootcampdetails.com.
Yep. Is
just a real simple place where you can go to get a little more info. It's not info driven though, as you know, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like look at it, and just go. Yeah, right. I mean, there's 12 or 14 different cities.
It's really more to get you the information on where are we going to be doing this.
Right.
So caveat, you're like one of the main drivers about when you went through that first boot camp,
right?
You called a handful of people. One of them was
28. 28.
Yeah.
Well, I probably called more than that.
Yeah. But then I went out there with you the next go round. And then I know it's always a funny story because I remind everyone, I'm like, and then the day after, Eric's calling me going, what'd you think about that? I was like, it's incredible. He's like, okay, so here's what we're doing. I'm like, what do you need me to do? And now we're 13 years later.
Right.
So
isn't that crazy?
It's awesome. But you're right. Be a better dad, be a better husband, be a better business leader, a leader, everything. Just everything. That's exactly what the boot camps. And if anybody's ever been to our office, you'll see all my swag from the boot camps and stuff like that. Cause I've been on the leadership team under Eric and some of these other guys for a lot, since the beginning. And it really is the most impactful thing.
No question.
For sure. And I went right after Ava was born.
Thank goodness.
So man, dude.
Think about my boys, let's check this out. This is interesting. My boys were 4 and 2.
Yeah.
When I went to my first one.
Yeah.
And now they're 16 and 14. And our oldest has been twice.
Right. Yeah.
And it just, like I didn't know any of this stuff till I was 30.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I'm 48, 36, maybe 35. I mean, it's think about that.
Yeah.
Think about getting, and I don't know how old you were when we went to California together. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if you were 15?
Yeah.
Like Landon was 16.
Dude.
He just turned 16.
Oh my gosh.
Life change.
Yeah.
Right. Life change. And so, I'm thankful that I learned at 35.
Yeah.
But I'm more thankful that they're going to be involved at 15 and 16 just to understand what no one is ever going to tell you outside of this endeavor.
Yeah.
Right. Would you agree? So,
and it's fun. We do, shooting guns and
all the stuff that
Landon won the basketball tournament in Texas last year and stuff. I mean, it was freaking awesome.
I mean, for someone like me,
awesome.
I wasn't around guns. That wasn't part of my childhood, and to be able to learn all that and see, but that may not be for some guys. It's other things, but regardless, it's experiencing things as a man in this scenario that you desperately need, but maybe you never got.
Yep.
So
I guess that's enough of that toxic masculinity talk that we're endeavoring in here. Someone's watching them. I just got canceled. Canceled. Getting off the airwaves.
But I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out here. And of course, one thing I was going to mention, I know you've got a Facebook page where you share a lot of different concepts and stuff. What's that Facebook page?
The Lost Millionaire Project.
Okay.
The Lost Millionaire Project.
Awesome.
I think that's just,
Yeah. And if anybody else wants to reach out to you or anything like that, do you have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook?
Yep. Twitter is just at Eric Dubbell.
Okay.
Instagram, I keep it really simple.
Yeah.
Right. Now, nobody knows how to spell my name though, right?
Well,
So
yeah.
it's ERICDUBB as in boy, ELL.
Yeah.
So 2 B's, 2 L's, right? But anyway, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I haven't gotten TikTok yet. I probably never will, but
don't get on it.
No.
It's a spiral.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
You'll get
not
sucked
doing that,
into
right?
it.
Not doing that.
Ashley finally gave me it one time, and she put it on my phone, or maybe it was Ava, and I was like, yeah, I'll check this thing out. An hour later, I go, nope. That of all the social media things, that was the one that got me. And I said, I literally got it off my phone. Now I put it back on my phone because we're going to be doing TikToks with this.
Sure.
So I'm sitting there thinking, it's a great way. Yeah, there's a great way to connect with people. But I'm sitting there going, God. I mean, I'm talking like I went an hour. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I can't believe it did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Instagram, nothing had ever gotten me like that. But the stupid TikTok, I mean, it was unbelievable.
But I guess also people could email you too, and then you could forward it on or whatever.
Of course.
Thing,
you could message me and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
we're connected.
Yeah. We know each other. I know where he lives.
Yeah.
So
you can find me.
Well, I appreciate you again coming on.
And
you guys, if again, any questions, any other thoughts or comments or whatever, hit us up. Visit the website as always for more details about some of our promotions and our sponsors, partners out there in the marketplace at protectingyourradius.com. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.
You've been listening to the Protecting Your Radius podcast from the LuxCore Studios in Bixby, Oklahoma. Thanks for sticking around, and connect with us and all of our partners at www.protectingyourradius.com. We want to thank our premier partners, LuxCore, the newest line of premium quality composite infill to slide into your FenceTrack fence system. Frame your style today. Also, StainTrack, the world's first patented standalone stain machine. Utilizing flood coat technology, StainTrack covers boards, pickets, posts, and any type of dimensional wood you can think of. And what better way to use your StainTrack machine than to use the easy application Wood Defender family of stains. Wood Defender goes on easy and covers in one coat with no back brushing. And of course, the true power of our show is you, the listener. Please rate and review our show on whatever platform you consume this content. Your 5-star likes and reviews help other contractors get the message that we all want to be better and do better. And in the construction world, we can never forget that before you can be great, you've got to be good. Before you can be good, you've got to be bad. But before you can even be bad, you've got to try.